Welcome to the Rich Report, a podcast with news and information on the world of startups. Today, my guest is from Scavado. We have Daniel Estrada. He's the CTO and product manager for Scavado. So, Dan, welcome to the show.
Hi, Rich. Thanks.
Well, Dan, I've got your slides up here, and I understand you have a demo for us. Should we just launch into that and learn more about your company?
Sounds good. I can start with a brief overview of the company and tell you a little bit about where we came from, and then we can do a quick demo of the product so folks get a better sense for what it does.
Sounds good.
So I'll get started here. Scavado, the company, was founded a few years ago. It used to be called Auto Search, and we got tired of getting several phone calls a week from people looking for cars. So we changed the name this year, and I've been with the company for a couple months now. We've really been launching kind of a rebranding effort and made a lot of enhancements to the product. Scavado is a simple, powerful web-based sourcing tool for recruiters. So recruiters use our tool to find candidates online. They use it to find what we call passive candidates, who are not people necessarily who are posting on job boards or who are applying for jobs through a company's careers site. They're typically people who are employed and they're being headhunted basically by our customers. So Scavado finds these people, it aggregates information about them from lots of different sources, and you'll see that in a moment when we look at the product. And then it allows you to compile their contact information and then build a pipeline that you can use to save prospects for particular projects. So if I'm recruiting, let's say, a Ruby on Rails developer, I can save multiple people into that project, and then I can export my list into Excel or a number of different applications that I want to import that information into and start making phone calls. Scavado originally started as a Boolean search string automator. And the interesting thing for me as a guy who started in the tech industry, kind of coming into the recruiting industry here, is that recruiters were using Boolean search strings, or are still, in many cases, using Boolean search strings. They're taking these expensive training classes and spending a lot of time writing their own search strings for Google and LinkedIn and lots of different websites. And that was always surprising because recruiters are supposed to be salespeople. They're supposed to be on the phone, selling jobs to people and drumming up new business. So there seems to be a disconnect there, and our tool really helps people who don't want to be technical, who don't want to be programmers, writing these complicated Boolean strings, who want to do that whole process of finding good candidates much faster. So that's what Scavado really does in a nutshell, and that's where we have a lot of customers, a lot of subscribers who are Boolean experts who've been writing their own strings for a long time, but they don't want to spend the time necessarily it takes to do that, so they use our tool instead. So traditionally, there are a lot of different ways that recruiters have found candidates. They obviously use their own personal network and the relationships they have. They use job boards. They post their positions, and they pray that they get some responses. In this day and age, actually, they tend to get a lot of responses because the unemployment rate in many parts of the country is still fairly high for our standards. And so a lot of times recruiters and corporate HR people are spending time wading through lots and lots of applications that they get. And that's a big time-consuming process for a lot of companies. Of course, they have candidate databases, things like applicant tracking systems where resumes and applications come into their website and get stored in these systems. Some of them do cold call. They are more proactive, and they'll call prospects that names they've gotten from other people or other sources, or names they found online, maybe through LinkedIn or any number of sites. The problem, obviously, with some of these traditional methods is that they tend to be very time-consuming. They're sort of out of your control whether people, good candidates at least, are going to apply to the positions that you post online. As I said, there's particularly a lot of applications coming in these days, and it's difficult also for less experienced recruiters and researchers to find really good information on prospect online because they don't necessarily know what the right tools are. They don't know the best way to compile that information in an efficient way. And it can be more difficult to find those passive candidates, the people who are employed and who tend to be higher quality candidates than many of the applications that you'll see come into a response to a job posting. So as I said, passive candidates tend to be folks who are the most successful in a particular field. About 70% of employable people are considered passive candidates, and they're often motivated by a number of different different goals. They want to find jobs maybe that are better paying, maybe that provide them with a better lifestyle, maybe jobs that they can do working for a more interesting or more exciting company with a stronger brand. But those people can be fairly difficult to find depending on where you're looking. So let me hop over to the application here. All right. So this is the Scavado application, and typically we encourage subscribers to move from left to right through all the different tabs, and then finally they compile their list. They can export that into CSV format and start making phone calls, keep other notes, load it into an applicant tracking system, for example. And a lot of our subscribers are corporate recruiters who work in-house for mid-size or larger organization, and some of them are third-party recruiters. And one of the reasons that corporate recruiters like to use Scavado is because they save a lot of money on third-party recruiter fees. Often when they have very hard-to-fill recs, when they have tough requisitions or jobs that they need to fill, they'll send those out to a number of third-party recruiters, and they pay, for an average job, anywhere between $20,000 and maybe $50,000 or $60,000 to have that job filled. It's usually a percentage of the first year's salary. So that can be very expensive. And so I'll jump into the tool here, and let's just do a quick search. I'm going to look for a Ruby on Rails developer, and I'm going to look for somebody in the Detroit area. These location keywords I can edit and change and add different profiles there just a little bit faster than adding keywords to my search. So what Scavado does is it runs a meta search here in the background, builds a Boolean search string, and goes out to a number of different sources to look for people. So first set of results we see are from LinkedIn. Recruiters love LinkedIn. It's a good database of information on candidates. Here's a gentleman named Derek Croft. I'm going to bookmark Derek, and Derek's information is not coming to me because I'm connected to him on LinkedIn necessarily. It's really just coming to me because Scavado searches the whole LinkedIn database. So we're not just limited to people that we're connected to here. I'm going to save Derek as a person of interest bookmark, and you'll see here I have a profile now on Derek that I can start filling information in on. So I know that Derek is a Ruby on Rails developer. I can Ruby on Rails developer at Salesforce. I can type that information in here, and I'm going to put in I happen to know that Salesforce.com is obviously Salesforce.com's website, but I can fill in whatever information I have available here on Derek. One thing that's very useful, if I go to the activity section here, we have something called the email pattern finder. And what this feature does is it goes out and it searches for email addresses for people who work at Salesforce.com, so I can try to identify the format that Salesforce uses for their email addresses. So you have to do a little bit of digging sometimes, but I can see here nrobinson at Salesforce.com. It looks like first initial, last name might be the correct pattern for Salesforce folks. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to just guess that Derek's email address is dcroft at Salesforce.com. And I can click verify, and we use a third-party service that goes out, asks the mail server at Salesforce whether this is a valid email address or not, and it comes back and tells me that I've got a valid address here. If I have an address, say Derek Croft at Salesforce.com, I can click verify here, and it'll come back and tell me that that address is not valid. So that's something that is really useful to recruiters because often they're sending out messages. Looks like that one works too. They might have a couple different patterns here. But they're often sending out emails to a number of different people, a number of different email addresses, and kind of guessing and getting a lot of bounce messages. So that's nice in terms of building a pipeline of contact information. So I can do a number of other things here. If I wanted to look at my window here, if I wanted to find out some more information about Salesforce, I can enter their information here and run a search on the company. So I can see, for example, information they have on LinkedIn about some of their careers and jobs they have posted on LinkedIn. I can see, we search CogMap to try to pull up organizational charts, for example. Here's probably the org chart. So here I can get some information about some of the people who are involved in the company, and some nice views here in CogMap. Also Glassdoor, which is an interesting tool that will give us information about some of the positions that Salesforce is hiring for. I can look up information on salaries, so I can get a sense for, what kinds of salary ranges Salesforce pays. So when I'm recruiting Derek, I know kind of what range he's expecting or expected to get in another position. So these are all tools that we kind of pulled together and really just simplify in the process of finding information about people and companies. We can also target a particular website and try to find folks from competitors, for example. So trade groups are often popular searches for this section in Scavado. For example, we just had a healthcare client who found this organization, the Michigan Organization of Nurse Executives, I think it's called, and we just happened on this result. But as you can see, here's a membership list with company names of people who joined the organization this year. So that can be very valuable because we can start putting some of these names into LinkedIn and some of the other tools, looking up some of these hospitals, and these are great places for us to start digging for other potential candidates if we're doing a search in healthcare. We can also search events and members. There's really an unlimited kind of number of combinations we can do here. This will search events and members of companies or different trade organizations. Here's Deloitte's website, a bunch of different results here. Deloitte has this energy conference, it looks like, this year. So we can look for speakers and people who are involved in different topics that Deloitte is interested in. We can look up alumni and faculty. So if I go to, let's say, MSU, Michigan State University, I can start looking up information about the Alumni Association, and I can find people who are involved with alumni groups and start recruiting them as well. A lot of times recruiters will be looking for people from particular organizations, so that can be really helpful. Faculty and staff, if we enter some more keywords here, type in biochemistry or any number of topics, I could find a lot of these lists a little bit quicker as well if I'm looking for particular departments. Related websites gives us a number of organizations that are related to the address that we targeted. So, for example, here are a bunch of universities in Michigan because I look for Michigan State, and we find Grand Valley State University, the University of Michigan. This can be really valuable when looking for a competitor, for example, with Whirlpool. I'll be able to find, GE Appliances, KitchenAid, Amana, all these competitors of Whirlpool, so I can start targeting them. So again, this is just to give recruiters ideas of other searches or other places they should really be looking. I'm going to not spend as much time on the rest of the tool because there's a lot of features here we could spend time on, but Research Tools gives us, again, the email pattern finder, verify email tool, all those things that we looked at already. Also Researcher's Dictionary, which allows the user to look up a definition or explanation of particular topics. We also search social media sites. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but Twitter, Google Plus. You can look up profiles and people who are having conversations on different topics. That can be really good depending on the particular job that you're recruiting for. And then here you can see in the My Research section, this is where all of my bookmarks come together. So here's Derek. I can add notes and assign him to different projects. He's in this Rails developer project right now. I can say that I called him and he seems interested. So any number of pieces of information here. And then when I'm done, I can pick a particular project, for example, this Rails developer project, and I can export that to Excel and open that spreadsheet and start adding other notes or import it into another project. Scavado also searches or saves rather my recent searches. You can see the searches I just ran here. And also if I'm a manager and I have team members, I can also look at, for example, my team member searches, things that they're looking for, kind of see the activity there that's happening in the tool. And that is pretty much it. That's the quick version. We also have the Scavado U use a support portal for our subscribers where they can go and ask and answer questions. We have video tutorials and some other documentation that they can print out, and we try to keep that pretty interactive. So that's a nice feature as well.
Well, cool, Dan. I'm really curious about the business side of this before we talk more about the tool. How big is the market? How many recruiters are out there?
That's a good question. I can't give you an exact number. I think, when you look at a typical organization, most Fortune 5,000 companies, I would say, have some kind of recruiting function in-house. And then even smaller companies than that, a lot of mid-sized organizations will have at least in-house HR people who are responsible for bringing talent into the pipeline, or they're using third-party recruiters and paying those high fees. And so that's a pretty sizable market. The recruiting industry itself is several $1 billion and growing, and especially right now with so much noise out in the market. There's so much data out there on people, so much information on social media sites and on LinkedIn, and there just seems to be this overwhelming amount of information that I think recruiters are trying to make sense of. And so being able to filter through that quickly and being more proactive and going after people who aren't necessarily out there, pounding down the door and looking for a position, that is increasingly becoming a much more efficient way to recruit good candidates.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that. Efficiency. It struck me as you were going through this that this is all about making a recruiter much more productive and putting it all in one place. Was that the objective when you went into this?
Yeah, it really was. The interesting thing is kind of a funny story. The founder of our company, Lori Fenstermaker, started trying to write her own Boolean search strings. She attended a training class a couple of years ago, and got back from a day-long seminar that she paid, I think, $1,000 for. She had a big binder with example search strings and all information, and she sat down and tried to make sense of it, and it seemed like there had to be a better way to pull all this information together, and so she hired a developer to try to automate that process for her a little bit, just for use with her own clients. And she was on site with a client and was asked to fill a position for a Mandarin-speaking cosmetics formula.
Yeah.
It was a pretty narrow request, and I
Sure.
think she found about four or six names, very quickly using Scavado, or what eventually became Scavado. And her client demanded to know how she had come up with such good names so quickly, and so she showed them the tool, and they asked where they could buy licenses, and Scavado was born.
Very slick. I was watching this demo, and right there in the right corner it says powered by Google. So really, is that primarily what's going on under the hood, Dan? Is a front end for Google searches, or are there other search engines employed?
Well, there's a number of different tools and search engines that we use. Google is definitely good partner for us. We use their API, we use their custom search engines technology. There are a number of different things kind of going on behind the scenes. We've had some experiences with Bing and other tools, other search tools in the past, and Google has always given us consistently the best results where we can get them. So Google powers a number of the sections here. We also have in the background here Indeed, and then as you saw, some of those research tools, those are being pulled in as well. So yeah, really what happens in the background is that these search strings are written for you immediately on the fly, and then applied to whichever sites seem to have given us the best results in the past. So there's a lot of research and a lot of work that has gone into trying to find different kinds of information and using the best tools for that. And the interesting thing about our tool is that it really was built by a recruiter who was trying to make her own workflow and her colleagues' workflow more efficient and faster. And so it's built on a lot of that experience of how do you source the best candidates online, and how do you find those people who are not out there applying for jobs.
So the one tool that really perked my interest, Dan, was this email verifier with the pattern tool. I would have great use for that myself. Have you thought about just breaking out that as a product?
We actually, we have users who spend most of their time just doing it through Scavado, and we actually use a third-party service provider, and there are a couple of different companies who offer that service. To be able to go out and pull information from the mail server. You don't always get a result. Sometimes the mail server is configured to not give you an answer as to whether an address is valid or not. But most of the time we have good luck with it. So I think there'd be a lot of competition if we tried to get into that market and just build a product for that. But there are some good companies out there who do it.
Okay. So Dan, you're a technologist. Where do you think this is going? What's coming around the bend?
Well, we have some pretty lofty plans for building out the tool further. I mean, there are definitely, and I can just talk about a couple of them, but there definitely, I think, is an opportunity to further streamline the interface. As you can see, Scavado is a pretty clean, simple tool. There's not a lot going on here. It's very powerful, but from an interface perspective, it's pretty easy to find what you need, and we have some very non-technical users who do really well with the product, and there's not really a learning curve at all. But there are some opportunities, I think, to sort of step a recruiter through the process from start to finish. We do a little bit of that already. Like I said, as people work their way, from one tab to the next, they do naturally go through a process. But I think we can do some things in the interface, in particular to work with recruiters who are specializing in a particular industry. So if I'm an IT recruiter, I have different needs and different resources that are going to work well for me than a healthcare recruiter. And we've been looking at some ways that we can customize Scavado to make those searches more kind of specialized and more narrowly focused on a recruiter's particular niche. So those are a couple things that we've been talking about. We also have plans for some mobile functionality. So I think that's probably not something that will ever replace the app, but it definitely, we've had a lot of interest in the mobile space, and that's something that we're exploring.
Well, great. So I guess I did want to ask, Dan, what are your customers telling you once they try this and kick the tires? Are they giving you some good feedback?
Yeah, we get a lot of really surprised customers and prospects, people who take a look at the tool and are amazed at the number of results they can get. I mean, you can see here we pull 10 pages of results for LinkedIn, for example, on this Rails developer position. And if I enter a few more keywords, if I'm looking for a Rails developer who also has experience with MySQL, I can enter additional keywords and further narrow down my list and get more and more good candidates. So I think recruiters are really amazed. This is like magic for them, because they're used to sitting there staring at a search bar and starting to type these Boolean search strings that are like Greek to them, and they get a lot of frustration in the online sourcing process. So when they see how easy this is, they're amazed. I actually had a phone call with somebody last week who wanted to talk to me about the technology behind this, because they were worried that we were doing something illegal with the power of the searches, and they wanted to be sure that we weren't hacking into LinkedIn or something to pull this information. And from a technologist perspective, that sounds pretty ludicrous. When you see the tool, you see these are pretty straightforward searches that we can run through LinkedIn's site, but people honestly are really amazed at how quick and easy this is. So that's most of the feedback we've gotten, is what a game changer it is in terms of the amount of time it takes candidates online. And then we do get great suggestions from our users as well. They have things they want to do with the pipeline tools, being able to sort that information in different ways, and particularly being able to organize the different prospects that they pull together in Scavado in different ways. So we get a lot of feedback like that. People always ask us to search new sites or integrate new tools with Scavado. So we're always looking at where we can get the best results, the best information, and pull that stuff together. But overall, the response has been really great.
Well, terrific. Well, Daniel Estrada, CTO of Scavado, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks a lot for having me. We're happy to be here.
All right. Okay, folks, that's it for the Rich Report. Stay tuned for more news and information on the world of startups.